the person eating. What did you eat?
Toast.
I like toast. I love mozzarella and 2 mini waffles.
Yeah, I went all the way to the bakery and he brought back a stick of bread.
Yeah.
Breadstick.
What the fuck else you go to the bakery for?
Pastries, and whatever else they got.
Go on the daily, get your baguette.
Yeah. A French
mini waffle.
bakery, I feel like pastries is the only answer.
Baguette!
Relatable characters in video games.
Mmm.
Like our most relatable, I guess.
Tifa.
I feel like you're conflating the meanings of relations and relatability.
You'd get nothing done if you were Tifa. Just be rubbing on yourself.
Nothing. I'd be incredibly unproductive.
I could even say like Arthur Morgan I somewhat relate to because Lord have mercy because
you hate immigrants?
every time he would say something, well, I would say something in the middle of the scene and then sure enough.
We've just started sounding more Texan.
Yeah.
What the fuck happened?
He would say it right after I said it. And
Somebody
so I was
said
like,
the word immigrants.
oh, dadgummit.
Before we begin, the Gamers Advocate would like to remind you that any episode could contain game spoilers, so watch or listen with discretion. And now your hosts, AMKomnenos, Banana, and Legion. Enjoy the show.
Well, welcome on in to yet another Gamers Advocate podcast. We are joined today with Banana Hammock Republic and AMKomnenos. Today, we're going to be going over relatable characters in gaming.
In case we didn't know who that was.
Yeah.
I'm working on my cool hand gestures.
Yeah,
like, you know how a lot of the
working.
wrestlers have something cool, like they got this, and that. I'm working on it.
But yeah, we're going to be going over relatable characters in gaming. And I think Banana kind of put an interesting spin on it. It's not always going to be the main character that we find most relatable. There could be an NPC or two that says, you know what? They have a point here, even though my main character has a certain idea and tendency to want to do things a certain way, they have a point, and maybe I can relate more to their point of view and maybe that'll shift your opinions of how to like approach that area, that scene. These are mainly like RPGs that are open world. I can think of like even Com's been playing Morrowind lately. You can definitely see how like some factions have a certain point of view, and you're like, now that I've talked to the NPC that they want me to kill, I may not want to kill that guy. But there's
Don't talk to the NPC.
Yeah, don't talk
Solve
to
all those problems.
No words, only kill.
For my example, just to kind of get us started off, I kind of mentioned before we did the podcast, it's an uninspired choice, but Dave the Diver for me, when I first played that, I thought, man, this guy's he's not in shape. He was on a beach, he was having fun, he was doing his own thing, and then a buddy calls him up and says, hey, look, I know you have some diving skills, won't you come on over and help me do this thing? Oh no, he invites him for some free sushi. That's what it is. He says, oh, okay, I'll go hang out with you. Well, to get the free sushi, you have to go diving for it. You have to go get this. And then the bar shakes because of an earthquake, and now you have to help him renovate it. And it's like, he kind of gets slowly dragged into things that he wasn't necessarily ready to do, but because he's somewhat capable, he's the best person for the job because he's the only person there who can do it. I totally relate to that because I can find myself in a lot of places, a lot of situations where I may not be the most trained to do this, but because it needs to get done, I'm gonna have to figure out how to do this, and I end up being in the choice for that, and somehow the technical expert going forward on that issue. So even though it was nothing,
which does explain why the podcast is able to come out regularly once a week.
Yeah, I did have like editing experience when I was in school, and but that was on like video, film, things like that. I wasn't used to doing, the modern stuff, so I had to teach myself to do a lot of the editing when it came to my own channel. So doing y'all's stuff for the podcast it was much easier for me because I already had the step in the right direction for that. So but yeah, I can totally understand Dave the Diver. He totally speaks to me on many, many levels. It's like he's constantly fascinated by new things that he finds because, yes, it's the same tedium that he's got to do over and over. He's got to get more fish. He's got to do this. He's got to find better fish. He's got to increase the menu. He's got to negotiate the social media waters with the I forget the name of their it's like an Instagram for fish or Cooksta, that's the name of it. And but then he finds like underwater people, and he's like, oh, I was not expecting to find this, but I'm glad I did. So he starts hanging out with them for a while. It's really a great story because it's just so beautifully weaves in his inability to be who he is in the real world and be interesting in that, whereas he is infinitely interesting in Dave the Diver's world. So anyway, you guys have any examples?
I think Dave the Diver is kind of an interesting one because I think there's probably other very similar kind of examples. But Dave the Diver is, I mean, he's one of those main characters, but I think he falls in a different category from the ones I was kind of suggesting we rule out almost. Because I'm thinking like the kind of faceless main characters, the kind that you can either customize and build in whatever way you want to. I think the idea for those characters is for you to project kind of a personality on them, so that like relatability isn't really what falls into place there. But a main character like Dave the Diver, who has kind of a fixed personality and is kind of fleshed out by the developers rather than the character, they have the capacity for that relatability. And kind of the way that you've introduced Dave as somebody who is just kind of constantly there, and so he gets asked to do things. I think that's a very common one. The idea that like the relatability of somebody who is kind of constantly forced to do things they're not really interested in, that is super relatable for me. So characters like Dave the Diver, the main character from Graveyard Keeper, and then kind of to a lesser extent, I feel like Karlach from Baldur's Gate 3 fits into that category. I think Karlach is an incredibly relatable character, at least for me, more recently, because the reality is that Karlach did everything that was expected of her, and it worked out horribly. Like, she constantly did what she thought was right in the moment, what people told her she needed to do, what people told her they expect of her, and she was punished for it. And that is a very relatable feeling. The idea of like being punished for doing the right thing is tremendously relatable. So for me, those moments where Karlach is having that kind of emotional breakdown, she's like, I'm going to die, and I did nothing wrong. I don't deserve this. This shouldn't have happened to me. Those moments hit really hard because of how relatable that character is.
Yeah, Karlach definitely is one of those where your choices at the time, yes, you may have had maybe no intention for good or bad. You know, you're just doing your job, but you're actually helping your city. You're taking a prominent role of, being the bodyguard or the whatever for a leader of your area, and you're hoping to improve the state of everybody by making sure that he stays alive, and then they end up betraying you. Absolutely. It puts you in a position where not only do you get betrayed, but now your whole world, you have to do things going forward, things you don't want to do, things is not in your nature to do, but you're really forced to do them. You have no choice. It's not a matter of like, no, I just don't want to do that. It's not really a choice at this point. Yeah, I think Karlach is a good inspired choice.
One of the things that we'll probably see as we're going through this is we'll find that we relate to the struggles of the character. We're not going to find many where we relate to a character in a way that says, for example, if you think you're really smart, you're not going to see a guy and say, hey, look, he's really smart and great at his job. I relate so much to that. Even if like that for some reason has a lot in common with you. Oh, wow, this guy's great at sport and everyone loves him. I relate so much to that. It's always going to be that we're looking, I think, for companionship and solidarity in the thing that affects us in a negative way. So almost all of these are probably going to have not a dark feel to them, but it's almost going to be in some way discussing something that we are unhappy with, or that something that we feel let down by over time. I don't think many of these are going to come out very bright and optimistic. I think so far that's already the case. With Legion, it's the feeling of, I'm going to be stuck doing this again because I'm the only one essentially who's going to try. I know I'm simplifying it heavily, but that's where we are. We've got Banana talking about the trying to do everything right and shit just goes wrong anyway. So you have this feeling of almost the randomness of the world around you, where you can't do anything. And mine's not going to be any better. So for myself, it was going to be Sam Bridges from Death Stranding. And I think it took me a few...
You have to walk everywhere. I'm always walking.
It's not that, although I am always walking.
This guy's always walking around. I relate to that so much.
Fine, it's just that. Here we go. Move on.
This guy has legs.
He's got a bike as well. I have a bike too. And I had a car once. So I'm an immigrant. And that's where I've been like multiple times in my life. I've been an immigrant to somewhere. And when you're an immigrant to a place, it's really isolating. Really massively isolating, because depending on where you're going, there may be a language barrier. For my case, it wasn't too bad, but there was a language barrier. But you go in and you don't know anyone, except maybe the person that you went there with. But even then, that person is either going to be in exactly the same situation, meaning they don't know anyone, or they're going to have possibly their own established friend group if they've lived here before. You're not really a part of that. And you'll always feel like you're on the outside looking in until a long time later, when you become truly a part of that group, if ever. You need to go out and sort of find your own friends, and you're going to spend a lot of time when you move somewhere new, when you actually immigrate somewhere, on your own. And you don't really have a choice but to keep going, because if you're an immigrant, your life's just a bit harder than most other people's there. You almost have to constantly be justifying your presence, even if you're fully legally allowed, even if you're fully paperworked up, accepted, whatever it might be. You never quite get that feeling of, yes, I am entitled to every single endowment, privilege, right, whatever it might be. There's always I need to be a bit better. Because whilst I'm here, I'm not even just representing me, I'm almost representing everyone from where I come from. So there's this push, and only you can do it, especially at the start when you don't know anyone. So when you start playing Death Stranding, and you're playing as Sam Bridges, and he's completely on his own, and all he can do is pick his stuff up and start moving over there. Literally all he can do is pick this stuff up and we're going to go there. And no one's really telling him to do it. All he's going to do is get this very brief connection with people who tell him, I'd like you to take this there, I'd like you to do this. But ultimately it's just him. He has to pick it up and get going and just move. And I didn't realize, like, for quite a long time, that it's remarkably similar to what it feels like when you go somewhere new, when you immigrate. You just have to keep going. You're probably on your own to some degree. It's bizarrely similar to what he's actually doing. And then you have things like the monsters in the game. We don't really have monsters in real life, like the BTs and that. But you do have things just hanging over your head. That feeling of insecurity, possibly, if you've only been somewhere for a short while. Okay, I've really got to settle in. I've really got to make myself a part of where we are now. There's maybe in the first year or so, there's the bureaucratic side, which is sort of hanging over your head as well. And you've got to deal with that. And that can feel like quite an unknown threat, especially if you don't know anything about it. If you think of like a Lovecraftian threat, the whole thing about Lovecraftian horror is ultimately that the big thing doesn't really give a fuck about you. It's that sense of scale. And that's what a bureaucracy essentially is. You lose all personality in the face of enormous, just say government bureaucracy, it's a simple way of saying it. So you have this giant Lovecraftian thing just hanging over you the entire time that you're trying to adapt to this new place you're in. So if I look back and I think to what that game was, I played it just after immigrating somewhere. And I think I didn't realize at the time quite exactly what that was saying. Especially because I was playing it during COVID as well, so there was that sense of commonality between the game and real life. But I think it's one of those games which just at the time, in the moment, I didn't realize. And then as time went on, I just became more and more empathetic to the idea of, oh shit, this was kind of like what I was doing.
I think you've also touched on an element of other characters that I find incredibly relatable. It doesn't really work with Sam Bridges, but it's that idea of isolation, that idea of separation that you experience in Death Stranding. And for me, there are those characters that use that as a defense mechanism. They've experienced some kind of trauma, they've experienced some kind of catastrophe in their own lives, and overwhelmingly they had a role to play in that, and they feel responsible, and as a result they just kind of curl up They want to isolate themselves from the rest of the world. They don't know how to deal with their pain, and they know one of the things that makes it hurt a little bit less is just being alone and not being forced to dwell on it, not being forced to face it, really. And you see that we were going to get to this game eventually at some point. You see it as a huge part of Final Fantasy VII. So there are quite a few characters who do this. The two biggest ones in my mind are Dyne and Vincent. And we see kind of those two story arcs where they feel like they made some mistake in their past. They're not happy with the way things played out. They don't know what to do. They don't know how to fix it. They don't know if they can fix it. And they feel like all of the negative consequences are their fault. They blame themselves. So Dyne isolates himself. He's living under, golden saucer. He's living kind of in this isolated wilderness, separated from everybody, and wants nothing to do with the world. And you can see kind of this destructive result from that isolation where he just gets consumed by this guilt, this rage. And when you finally meet him and you finally confront him and try to give him that option to return to the world, he's already too far gone. He's rejected it. He's turned on what was his closest friend. He tries to kill him, and then that doesn't really work out. And his next option at that point is to just end it. He just throws himself off a cliff and abandons any connection to the world because he doesn't feel like he belongs in it anymore. And then you have that kind of similar starting point with Vincent, where he's tortured by his past mistakes. He doesn't know how to handle it. He isolates himself in the basement of the Nibelheim mansion. And then when you confront him, you bring up the possibility of redemption. And that's kind of what gets Vincent moving again, what gets him to re-enter the world, is the idea that the events that played out as a result of his mistake, his failure, whatever you want to call it, they're not done. And as a result, Vincent still has a role to play. So there is the possibility for him to get involved and actually affect a positive outcome here. And I feel like Dyne never saw that possibility. Dyne never saw that opportunity for him to have a positive impact on something. And that's why he just throws it all away. Whereas when you meet Vincent, you're like, Sephiroth's still alive. We're working on it. We're trying to do something about it. And he realizes, maybe I can actually fix my mistakes. But that idea of responding to failure, responding to trauma in your own life, and just knowing that it's not going to hurt as much if you just try to ignore it, but you're also not going to ever fix anything. It's just going to stay the way it is. That's a very human, very relatable response to those types of things. And I do that all the time. When, depression hits really hard, I'll just tuck myself away in my own little world, separate from everybody for, days or weeks, and then realize, oh yeah, this isn't helping at all. It might feel a little better in the moment that I'm not dealing with, all the struggles that I have to, but they're still going to be there whenever I get over this, and I need to get back into it and do something. I think that's what just makes those characters super relatable to me.
But also those characters empower you to believe that it's okay to not always have to engage with everybody, so that you can find time for yourself. Because it's one thing to recognize that maybe that's not accomplishing anything later on, but you do need to spend that time for yourself from time to time in order to rediscover
there's
yourself. There's
definitely a happy medium between those two. You can't isolate yourself from
happy medium.
everything.
The happy medium might be Barrett. He's
that really is. It's that idea that these things are going to happen. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to fail, and there's going to be negative consequences. And even with Barrett, I think in the story kind of does isolate himself for a while, but then he realizes he has responsibilities, And overwhelmingly, it's the fact that Barrett has Marlene. He's not allowed to pull completely away. So he invests in those responsibilities. He takes care of Marlene. He has a purpose in that time that he's kind of refusing to face the reality of his past, so that when he comes back to those moments where he actually does have to face it, he already has this kind of foundation to say, like, even if I can't fix those other things, I have things to do. I have a purpose. I've learned from those mistakes. Maybe I can't rectify things. Maybe I can't redeem myself, but I can use that information to be better in this other kind of goal that I'm looking towards. And maybe that's like the healthy way to go about these things. You can't confront those things immediately. You're not going to be in the right headspace to handle them properly if you're just constantly pushing forward and trying to deal with everything in the moment. Sometimes you do need to take time away and reflect and just experience it. Just let it play out. Let it have the impact it's going to have on you. But you can't linger in that spot. You can't just stagnate. You have to go back and be a person again. And Barrett found a way to do that. Dine didn't. Vincent kind of did, but you had to give him that purpose.
Yeah, and you still get the feeling, though, that Vincent, he doesn't have the attachment to the modern world that someone like Barrett has. So he ends up as a more healthy version than Dine, but certainly still deeply cracked and deeply broken. Yeah. It's just the way that he breaks keeps him going.
Yeah.
Almost driven by, not spite, but driven by much baser motivations than Barrett actually is.
Yeah, I think it's after the end of the events of Final Fantasy VII, you can see Barrett going back and having a happy ending. You can't see that for Vincent. You kind of see him going back to the basement.
Yeah.
Well, I will say, I know we would probably talk about Mass Effect at some point, so I'm going to bring up one from Mass Effect, and it's not one that you're going to think of.
You don't want to keep talking about Final Fantasy VII?
Oh, yeah, sure, we can. By the way, Com is doing a Let's Play of, I think it's Final Fantasy VII, and so if you need...
I don't know, I can't be bothered to watch.
Yeah, I've been too busy. But no, if you want, like, some of these characters, if they're new to you, trust me, Com will go over them, so... look for that.
I'm looking forward to the we're gonna skip Yuffie, we're gonna skip Vincent, we're just gonna speed run this.
90%, let's go.
Actually, what was funny is that watching Com do some of the Let's Play, he was just like, normally when I do this, I just do this. And so he describes what he would have normally done. He says, you know what? It's obviously pattern recognition in my brain. I'm going to do that thing that I said I wasn't going to do.
You have to run around that pillar. You can't not run around the pillar.
Yeah. So I'm pretty sure Com is going to have a lot of enjoyable moments in the Let's Play. It would probably be almost no different than watching you do it on stream, probably.
Yeah, it's a very similar.
Yeah. For me, in Mass Effect, I always forget how to pronounce her name, but it's the matriarch Althea. It's Liara's mom, or father. Liara's father. So Liara's father is always watching out for Liara from the shadows and hidden in disguise. He's the bartender, and in Mass Effect 2 and also Mass Effect 3. It's like, hey, you're the same person from that bar over there. Yeah, I like serving drinks. What can I say? With more discovery, of course, you realize that that's Liara's father. And so from afar, you know, we look at this matriarch who shouldn't really be doing what they're doing, but they're comfortable with where they're at and what they're doing. They're pretty much retired. So they have a lot of life experience, and they're using that life experience and that talent and that ability to watch over the one most important thing in their world. And it's really kind of funny because this part is always, from a lore standpoint, kind of like odd, because we know of Liara's mom from her gigantic presence. And Althea, matriarch Althea, just says, yeah, my dad was a Krogan. you know, he had these scars. I guess mom liked that. Me, I'm into asses. We never got to see that side of Liara's mom too much. So it was always like kind of like
always facing the camera.
Yeah, and I was like, I guess she had it going both ways then, apparently. But yeah, I think Liara's father somehow, you know, serving drinks. I do a lot of the tavern games and stuff. I was like,
Cobb and I are just sitting here trying to figure out how this has anything to do with relatability.
No, that's exactly what I was.
No.
I like butts too.
No, I totally relate to Althea as a character, as an NPC, because I could see.
Also found Liara's mom attractive.
Yeah, I too love butts. Yeah. But yeah, like basically, like if I had to like watch over one thing, like I'm already done what I needed to do. Yeah, it would, you know, it would be
it would be Liara.
Yeah, watching over Liara, sure.
I have a relatable character. Okay, so
getting back to the topic,
this one less booty. It's a bit of a more nebulous
Guybrush
one.
3-point.
I love that guy. Oh, George,
slightly less booty, but not no booty.
George Stobart's not a bad choice. So, mine is, and I don't know what his character name is, but it's the main character from Hollow Knight. I think it might just be the Knight, the Hollow Knight. He's not the Hollow Knight. He can't be the main character. Gonna call it. So, I think there's something in that character, because when you start, it's a lot like playing Dark Souls. You just drop in. You don't really know exactly what you're doing. The game shows you a few buttons and sends you off on your merry old way. And I can't think of anything much more relatable to adult life than being shown how a few things work, but nowhere near as much as you're going to need to really do a good job, and being then sent on your way to do whatever that you can. And I think it's a game where just it speaks about just the search for meaning, because even as you're playing at the very beginning, you don't really know what you're doing. You're just going in and hoping that somewhere along the way you find what you're going to do. And I think that's how most people live their life. There are some people, sure, who when they're a bit younger, they know exactly what they want to do, exactly what they want to be. But I think for a lot of people, it's just you either don't know or you change your mind. So this one little faceless character who's going through a world where he doesn't know really what this world is, doesn't really know how to negotiate it, but knows at the same time that there's no choice but to negotiate the world. I think that's one of the most relatable things I could ever imagine actually being in a video game, because it's non-specific. It's not about being a parent. It's not about being a brother. It's not about losing your job. It's not about being poor. It's just a general search for direction, which surely everyone at some point has to deal with. So I think the small fellow from Hollow Knight.
I think it's just the Knight. That's how he's referred to.
Did you Google it?
I did. That was all I found.
Okay.
I'm curious if there's like an Easter egg where your character's name is revealed, but I didn't see anything like that.
Jack Package.
That's probably it.
Yeah, that sounds legit.
I mean, given that he is in a Souls-like game, I think that means for me, his name is Glitterspank, because that is the name of every Souls character I've ever created.
Oh god, he's Gareth Bale. I've just realized.
I thought that was going to be your first choice, that who you related to was Gareth Bale. I thought that's who you were going to...
Video game characters.
In FIFA.
He is in FIFA.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like this goes back to our draft episode. It's like they have to be known from video games. They're not a real person who is in a video game.
Yeah, we can't have Steph Curry either. Is that the name?
Yeah,
Steph Curry? Yeah.
Yeah, we also can't have people who don't exist. So, yeah. Had you gotten the name wrong, you still would have been right.
Would have been fine too.
Yeah.
Unless Sean Curry is a person. Googling that. Plays ice hockey. Damn it. Anyway, that's mine. The Knight from Hollow Knight.
Yeah, and I think that's a very similar kind of explanation as to, some of the other entries we've already given. The idea that overwhelmingly these people are just kind of thrust into a situation they didn't want to be in, and they're just adapting to their environment, adapting to the scenario that they're in. And it's this kind of extremely relatable struggle to just be like, I had plans, I had aspirations. I'm not allowed to just focus purely on those. Things keep getting in the way and I have to adapt to them. That's everybody knows that experience. Nobody goes through life doing exclusively what they want to do. So the characters we meet, where it's like their whole defining story arc is a situation where it's just like, well, here I am. I guess I got to make the best of this situation. That's, yeah, I feel like every person playing a video game will be able to relate to that experience.
I've got a more specific one. I'm the guy from BioShock, because I've also spent my life arguing with people who think Ayn Rand had anything to say.
Yeah. I'm not gonna. This is not a literature episode, but you're not wrong. Yeah, I cannot stand Ayn Rand. I can respect her, but I cannot stand Ayn Rand. Yeah,
I think it's Ayn Rand's arguments. Her philosophy is an important step in understanding general philosophy, because I feel like everybody who reads Ayn Rand understands or sees some logic to the explanation she gives, and they see some kind of natural inclination in that direction. That it feels almost like this is the way the world works. But I feel like if you're really going to discuss philosophy, you're going to reach that point where you then see all of the flaws in that philosophy, where you see where it falls apart. So I feel like for everybody who is even remotely considering philosophy as just kind of an avenue of investigation, like a way to invest some time, Ayn Rand is an important stepping stone to moving past Ayn Rand. Like, that is the entirety. Like, if you are going to become somebody who is capable of having a cogent discussion in the realm of philosophy, you have to have evolved past the point where you recognize Ayn Rand as something of value.
I love how I say, like, this is not a literature podcast. Banana says, so let me tell you about Ayn Rand.
Yeah. Remember that thing Allegiant said? Fuck that.
We're going off topic, boys.
Well, I think for me, I also brought it up very briefly before we started, but I grew up in West Texas, and my natural tone is, I don't have a Texas twang. I have more of a drawl. And a lot of the people I grew up with, and, you know, their friends, their dads, their grandparents, were very much in that Arthur Morgan style. That's kind of what I know. When I am in my natural speaking tone, it's much slower. My job requires me to communicate a lot of information pretty rapidly, so I have to talk faster than I'm always accustomed to. And so even when I'm with you guys, I talk much faster than my natural, normal speaking voice.
Oh God, you're so slow with us.
Yeah, I know. And so it was really funny
it's
playing.
Not true. It felt like that joke had to be made.
Well, but like when I was playing Red Dead Redemption 2, I was just like, oh my goodness, this is not really even a character. This is just somebody I know. You know, and
Mike
I would
down the street.
And I was playing. I would encounter certain things, and I would say, "Oh, God damn it!" And then Arthur would say, "God damn it!" And I was just like, "Oh." So I kind of relate to Arthur Morgan in several ways, and you know, he's not too particular with whatever firearm he uses. He'll just pick up whatever he's got, and just start shooting. So I can totally relate to that too. It is Texas. So, but yeah, Arthur Morgan, he was really thrust into a situation as well, where he's not a bad guy necessarily. He can do bad things. I don't think he's evil-hearted by any means, but he's with a bunch of evil-hearted people. But he's also around a group of people that have good hearts that accompany their group. And so he's trying to, especially initially those opening scenes where they're in the winter and they find shelter, he's going to go kill some people to make sure that the women and children and the other people who can't help him with the party and the rally that need that support. So he's going to handle it. Totally relate to Arthur Morgan. Yep.
Yeah, I think he's a good choice, and I think a lot of people would see themselves in a character like Arthur, but in a slightly different way. I think most people would like to consider themselves good people. It's very rare you'll find someone self-aware and proud of being a bad person. You want to aspire to be good, but maybe sometimes fall short. And a large part of who Arthur is someone who seems on the inside, depending on how you play it, to have the heart of a good man, to have the soul of a good man, but to be so defined by a combination of just what he's in as a world and who he's with, particularly Dutch, and the debt that he feels to Dutch because of his young life, that he constantly comes up short, really, until the very, very end. We're constantly just try and fall. Try and fall. And I'm sure in most people's lives, even if you've had great success in everything, there's something where you didn't. Maybe you had a great career, but romance didn't
God,
quite
I hope
pay
you
off.
failed at least once, or you're not relatable.
Honestly, yeah. It's like if you meet the guy who's 6'6", 250, jacked, tall, smart, hot, everything, you're like, fuck you, piece of shit.
We're talking about Banana, right?
Okay, fair point.
Not 6'6".
Oh, not
but that is
6'6".
what
He's not 6'6". Okay.
250 was pretty close, though.
that
You
is what
lost me
makes
at
Banana
jacked
so,
again, though. But,
I was just saying, it's what makes you so inherently dislikable is your complete lack of imperfections. I know everyone worth knowing has something they failed at.
mm-hmm.
Everyone, because it's what makes you a well-rounded human being. And that's what Arthur does. He tries and fails, fails, also doesn't give up, and eventually managed to get to be the person who he's supposed to be, no matter how brief it actually is. And I think everyone at some point wants that moment. Even if, like you say, if your career's perfect, if your love life's perfect, but maybe just like you're not very good at something, you want to be good at it. In that one thing, you're Arthur Morgan. You're going to keep trying it, but one day I'm going to get there.
I think this discussion has led me to kind of see like another aspect of this like thrust into the circumstances kind of trope almost. I don't know, trope is probably not the right word, but it is kind of this experience that all of these characters seem to share, where they're just constantly adapting to their environment, to things beyond their control, and trying to make the best of that situation. And it kind of led me to a character that I've kind of re-experienced very recently in Ramza Beowulf, the main character of Final Fantasy Tactics. And the reason I think they are kind of special in this regard is they are not only thrust into this circumstance where they feel like they need to take action, they need to deal with the world around them, but they are also, they find themselves in a situation where it's like everyone else in the world is ignoring what is obviously happening. And that is one of those infuriatingly relatable aspects of that game. The idea that it's like, how is nobody else seeing this? The dude who is laughing maniacally is clearly the villain. Why are we not doing something about it? That is the entirety of Final Fantasy Tactics. It's just, why the fuck do you think you're doing the right thing when it's so very obviously the wrong thing with every character in that game? And that is very much what it feels like to be an American right now.
Oh god.
I mean, I'm not, that was mostly for the comedy of that moment, but the idea is that we've all had that experience where, you know, we see kind of stronger forces than ourselves guiding the world in a direction that doesn't suit us, doesn't make sense to us. It just seems like, how can you possibly think that's a good idea? It's so very obviously the wrong thing to do. And then you have a conversation with somebody and they're like, no, I think it was the right thing to do. How can that be your conclusion? How do you justify this? That is every conversation you have in Final Fantasy Tactics is, I'm going to go do the right thing. And then somebody's like, oh, I don't think that's the right thing. It so very obviously is. How did you come to a different conclusion? That's an incredibly relatable kind of experience. Just the idea of like, I don't know how you can possibly see the world differently from me. And probably in a negative regard that shouldn't be relatable. Like it would be better if we had the awareness, the understanding to see other points of view and have it click, but that's just not how it works.
Yeah, I started replaying Black Myth, and what you're saying there is really interesting because the way it's telling the story, of course, I've said this before, that the bosses are the story mechanic, and you get to see their side of things. That's the thing about it. So you get to see not only what you're trying to do and what to accomplish, but you're actually, the story's being told from their point of views. And sometimes it's the same character, the good version and the bad version. And you can kind of get a more depth analysis of the story because you see the other perspective. And it's a battle against the people who should not have power.
My master. Safe. The scriptures. Sound. All I ever wanted was a life in my mountain, free from you and your so-called merits. Those high above don't trust me. I understand that. And they send you and those knuckleheads to threaten me. To obey and serve once more. I understand that too. But what I don't understand is... you bastards killing my kind!
Had another one, and this is kind of a bit broader, and it's way too dramatic for this very specific character, but it's more the idea. So it's something that you can apply to, I think, a protagonist of pretty much any RPG, and this would be anything where you form a party. But the character who jumped to my mind who has the most extreme version of it is Joel from The Last of Us. And it's to do with the idea of family. So your family, and this is not a sad story. I like mine. I love mine. They're great. But your family is what you're born with. You're kind of stuck with it. There's no element of choice in this. And yeah, for some people it won't work out that way, but as a general principle, that's what it is. You're born with this, and you're kind of stuck with it for better or for worse.
Cue the Arrested Development theme music.
Please do that. I want that to be our first copyright strike. So, Joel, at the very, very start of The Last of Us, loses his daughter, who you take pride in for a few minutes. She seems great. And then he loses his daughter, and just a short ways along the journey, he takes on essentially another. He takes on a young girl, and he's very guarded and very wary, but over time realizes that he's taking on this sort of surrogate daughter figure. And that is something that's surprisingly relatable, because even though in life that isn't the situation for most of us, that's not what's happened. How much time, for example, when you're working a full-time job, do you spend with your family, especially when you're an adult? How much time do you spend with your mother or your brother? And how much time do you spend with your coworkers? And your coworkers, you probably don't have anything more inherently in common with them than you have the fact that you walk around on the same piece of carpet. And that's probably all you necessarily have, and possibly some very broad strokes interest. If you work in IT, you probably have some computer foundation as well. But that's it. But you end up bonding with these people to a way that they almost become, although be very careful when the company tells you this, that they almost become a second family to you. And you become very close and very tight with them. And that's what every fucking JRPG character does. Over the course of the game, Cloud meets all these new friends who become his new family. When you start playing Dragon Age, you meet Alistair and he's a prick. But then by the end of it, him, Morrigan, the elf guy, they're all your family. That one's not that close. Obviously, that's somewhere second or third cousin. Yeah.
You know, your family. What's his name?
I've got a lot of cousins. They get mixed up. But just this idea of the building of bonds with people with whom you have nothing more in common than a set of circumstance and serendipity, which you do all the time in real life.
Yeah. I have a set of cousins that have the same name as me, but obviously different last names. And then when their mother would be with my mother, and it's like,
Legion
what's
Blue?
Yeah, what's Legion X over there doing? What's Legion F doing over there? And it was kind of like what they would say, well, which one are you referring to? Because getting them all in the room, they would just confuse each other. So yeah.
My dad and myself, we got very similar names. Not the same, but it's as soon as you abbreviate it, like, and make the short single syllable version, it's exactly the fucking same. Remember the amount of times my mum as a kid, like, shouting across the house just to hear both of us reply, "Whoa!" at the same time.
I think Sonic is very relatable. So he's fast. Yeah. He's super fast. Yeah.
He likes chili dogs.
Yeah. Yeah.
Who doesn't like chili dogs? But I think you kind of headed in a direction that made me break the rule that, like, the only rule I established, that, you know, customizable character creation doesn't count, but it's the main character of any Baldur's Gate game, not Dark Alliance, but the idea that
Any other Baldur's Gate game.
You as this character take on companions, you're working towards a common goal, you have similar interests, but as the main character in the Baldur's Gate games, you have to balance their personalities. So in Baldur's Gate 1, it was fundamentally tied to alignment. There were some exceptions, you know, you meet Alora, who is a wonderful character that you don't get to interact with for a very long time, and she's, I think, chaotic good. And then you meet Edwin, and he's lawful evil, and they somehow become besties. Doesn't make a lot of sense, but, like, that's the exception to the rule. Overwhelmingly, evil aligned characters do not get along with good aligned characters. And when you're trying to balance your party and you want to, like, kind of balance out skill sets, you want, you know, a mage, you want a cleric, you want frontline fighters, maybe you want, well, you'll definitely want a thief, because finding and disarming traps is a huge part of that game. You want to balance all of those things, but you also have to take into account people's personalities. And that's something I think we've all had to do. We all have, you know, our friend groups that we have connections to through a specific channel. So friends we made at school, and then we move on, get a job. We have friends we made at work, and they don't quite overlap because of our how we ended up entering those circles of friends. But, you know, you're having a party, and then you invite your friends from school and your friends from work. Now they have to interact with each other, and you have to kind of shepherd them through that first awkward meeting, because making friends is difficult, especially when you're in your 30s. And now you have these kind of, like, weird overlapping circles of friends, and maybe they'll find a connection with each other, and you'll have, you know, friends being made within these groups. But you as a person still need to kind of carefully navigate your network of friends and recognize that some people aren't going to get along. Some people are going to be abrasive. Some people are going to be overwhelming in those first few moments. And they're going to be just a very strong personality that might turn people off in the moment. But once you kind of get past that initial shock, they're wonderful. That is very much an experience that is captured in Baldur's Gate in a very simplistic way, but it's there. And it's a very relatable experience to just be like, can you two shut the fuck up for a second? We have shit to do.
I don't know if you've ever had this exact experience, by the way, but I've liked sometimes, like, I've brought two groups together, like you say, in real life, and then you see the groups are beginning to intermingle a bit, and then you see maybe one person from one group really hitting it off really well with someone from the other group, and you just sit there thinking, nope, don't like that.
Yeah. Nope, you are both my friends. Get away from each other.
These
must remain separate. You get back over there, and you over there.
I gotcha. No intermingling of the peoples.
No.
So
it feels gross. Yeah.
I like to keep my work life separate from my personal life, and then when they overlap because of something I did, I immediately regret it.
And immediately resign.
Yeah.
Yeah, Baldur's Gate is definitely, because of the alignment system, lends itself to that situation. But it's kind of funny, at the beginning of the podcast, she had mentioned, that, not everybody is probably going to be naturally evil-hearted or something, but throw me into a D&D system or a Star Wars system, I will play Sith. I will play the evil character just because I can.
That's normally why, is because you're not in real life. So it's a chance to live out those things that you would never do.
Banana's seen me play the Old Republic on like a true Sith, and I'm like, he's like, how could you? What are you? Well, this is what we're doing. Oh yes, we're doing this.
No. Legion's the fucking worst.
I tend to play as a good guy, even to this day. I've definitely choked more people in real life than I have in video games. Not even close.
Well, we're not talking about your.
I knew that's where they was going. Yeah.
Bedroom cardio.
Gamer's Advocate After Dark episode.
My dressing gown, my robe.
GAAD. That's a thought. Yeah.
Gab.
Let's not use that soundbite.
Over and over.
That's gonna replace that like opening sequence where you have that like kind of gentle tone. It's just gonna be calm saying God.
It's the super chat sound. Like the perfect reward.
500 subs. We need them, y'all. We need 500 subs to get super subs. Super chats. But you kind of mentioned also about the whole story and alignment and things like that. Morrowind, you've been playing that lately, and that is definitely one where you begin to learn as far as relatability. You don't know anything about anybody. You literally just off the boat, and you're a criminal. You have apparently a history. Yeah, you're a criminal. You have an unknown history. Basically, you can wield it however, just like any other Elder Scrolls game. However, because it's telling the story and you're discovering things, you don't know any of this stuff. You're learning about prophecy, and it's like, oh, okay. And you start, I don't know where the map is, and you have to guide yourself from here to here. And what's different about that is that in Oblivion and in Skyrim, you're the chosen one right away. So you can't really always relate to, I'm the chosen one. You just are because you're the protagonist. In Morrowind, you discover who you are. And I keep saying that it's just it's the best Elder Scrolls game. It's not even close, and it's worth playing. Banana, go play it.
Nah.
Well, the thing is, you can never identify with the chosen one aspect of someone being the chosen one. You can identify with other things about them. So I would say to Cloud in Final Fantasy VII, he's definitely the chosen one because he is immensely powerful. Mm-hmm. But that's not the part you would identify with. It's his struggles. It's the fact that he's fundamentally broken as a person and needs in some way to be repaired through the help of his friends. So you identify with that bit. Like Skyrim, Oblivion, it's the same thing. They are so linked, though, to their chosen oneness. I mean, the Dragonborn, it's in your heart and soul. You are the one person who can do this thing. Oblivion, you are the one person who's capable of doing what you're supposed to be doing. Morrowind, I do feel as though the game makes your chosen one character not feel at all like the chosen one. Until you get much further in. Prior to that, you do spend such an amount of time feeling like you said, a nobody who just came off the boat. Which probably gives it, if I had not been streaming it, it would probably feel somewhat similar to that feeling Death Stranding gave me. But when you're streaming it, of course, you're talking with other people, you're not fully invested in the character, so it softens everything, it rounds off all the edges. But no, I'd say it would probably be a very, very good example of a game that can help you live the experience of being someone new to an area that doesn't care about you, actually doesn't even want you there, and you trying to find your feet in that world. Especially because the first few levels are pretty punishing as well.
Yeah, because you're also finding out even later in game, like, this is an RPG. You kind of know the direction that it's going to probably go, but then you're like still questioning it because there's enough question marks out there to make you think maybe this isn't how the prophecy should go then. Maybe it's all just a red herring. Maybe the gods just want us to think a certain way or something. There's enough out there to cause doubt. That's the beauty of the storytelling of Morrowind. So...
But it's when you're going through and you're seeing how much, or what a big part of the prophecy just being recognized as this important figure is. And that's when you start to think like, well, hold on, if I'm the chosen one, why do I have to be recognized by anyone? The hell is this? Like, why is the chosen one being appointed by council? Almost. And it just leaves you, like you said, with that touch of doubt. And actually, doubt is one of the most normal things you can have. If you think of how common things like imposter syndrome are, how common it is to doubt yourself in a way that you would never doubt others. Morrowind gives you that. Skyrim, you can't doubt that you're the chosen one. You can absorb dragon souls.
Yeah, you can read Elder Scrolls and not go blind. You're the chosen one.
There you go.
Yeah.
You are repeatedly told this, and the way people speak to you. Whereas Morrowind, they still talk to you as a foreigner. Right up until presumably the end. I'm not that far yet, but I presume.
I was thinking of something we kind of joked about before recording this, but like there are those characters that became like franchise characters, and they're extremely likable, but I don't find them particularly relatable. Like the two big ones that are coming to mind are Mario and Sonic. I don't find either of them relatable, but they are extremely likable characters inherently. Yeah. And I'm just trying to think of that, like, what is it about them that makes them likable while at the same time me never feeling like, oh, I can see myself in this character.
Well, I don't think Mario ever has doubt. Does Mario have doubt?
Mario is, he's obsessed with getting some.
That's not canon.
From Donkey Kong till Princess Peach.
He is just a hero constantly saving the same woman who's always getting into trouble.
But yeah. Oh, and I mentioned one more. For me, this is an interesting one because I think you guys were indicating you didn't see relatability, but V in Cyberpunk was very relatable for me. You trying to make a name for yourself.
I can see relatability. It was one of those characters where like you build the character the way you want, and then you're supposed to find relatability in a character you created.
Yeah.
But there's so many like little side quests and stories that give you that option. Like you're constantly, yes, you may be the chosen one in this situation. Obviously, you somehow merged with the Johnny, the character. And the thing is, though, is that so many of those little side quests really make you decide for yourself. And a lot of them, they do have an impact on you. Like, when you're getting, like, say, the band together, do you help one of Johnny's old bandmates feel better about himself? I mean, he was on the verge of depression. You can really kind of guide that story. And that's kind of what I'm saying is that you really have a lot of options to see yourself in that character and say, what would I do at this point? And that's the whole point of that first person camera, is to make you really kind of feel that. So I think it worked for me, at least.
Yeah, I didn't get it so much with Cyberpunk. There's just something about it I always felt quite separated from the character. Perhaps the second personality, perhaps having, what's his name?
Johnny.
Which one's V? Which one's Johnny?
Johnny Silverhand is the one inside
Keanu Reeves.
Okay, gotcha. No, just the way that they're so interlinked, I just felt like there almost wasn't room for a third person me in there. So I never felt the real empathy or real relatability with those characters. I thought they were great. It was a really, really good game, but I just didn't ever quite get to relatable. One who just came into mind was Jill Valentine, particularly in Resident Evil 3, which I finally played recently. It's absolutely astounding. It's a shame it's so short. It's a shame it feels like a DLC more than a full game itself. Although, well worth it. If anyone finds it on sale, it's well worth the play. The way that she struggles, that perseverance that she shows throughout the game, the character she shows, the heart that she shows all the way through, the way that she maintains a certain levity despite the gravity of the situation all around her. I don't know if I empathize with her. I don't know if I relate to her, but I'd like to. There's so much admirable in there that still feels human. Like, she doesn't feel, what's the term we use, like Mary Sue? It doesn't feel like that. Mm-hmm. But maybe she's still a bit too perfect for me to truly relate to. But there's a lot in there that's wonderful.
Jill is my favorite part of Resident Evil, easily. She as a character and as just a moving force of the story. I want to know more just because of Jill.
Yeah, I've been replaying the series recently, so I've done 1, 2, 3.
I think that's
5,
another one
6.
of those
I want more Jill.
Interesting ones, because like with the main character of Skyrim, you feel like there's no way to relate to them. They're this already superhuman figure because of what they can do. And when you look at the things that, Jill just survives, the things she just shrugs off and gets up and walks away from, there's no way to relate to that, but like she's still framed in this, she's just a human being doing her best kind of portrayal. But like, no, she's not. She is undeniably superhuman. She would have died at the very beginning of Resident Evil 3 if she were just some person.
Yeah. It still works.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, as far as the Chosen One and it not working, that's why I don't think for me Inquisition worked. I love the Inquisitor. I love especially the voice. It's Trainer from Mass Effect 3. But I never really saw the relatability between that character and what they were doing. It should have been, because it's defining all those same things that I liked about those other characters I said, but it just didn't work for me. And I couldn't really pinpoint why. But the Inquisitor and Dragon Age just couldn't find relatable.
I think the problem with the Inquisitor is they gain so much power. When you think about the can't remember the word, institutional power that they gain over the course of the game, where eventually you are commanding a fortress, you're sentencing people to death, or you're pardoning them, sending these people off to the Grey Wardens, that whatever relatability might have been there at the start, which is damaged by the fact that you're the one who survives that big fucking explosion and everything, whatever might have been there becomes so far separated from any recognizable person you've ever met that to truly identify would be really hard unless you're a king.
Yeah.
I think the way that they go about establishing you as this kind of unique character makes it a bit more possible to still find them relatable, because like in Skyrim, you're the Dragonborn. You are born that way. You are immediately special. In Inquisition, something happens to you, and now you have this power, and you're just like, well, shit, I didn't want this. This isn't who I am. This isn't how I've always been. This is just a burden placed on me by circumstance. And that makes it a little bit more understandable. You kind of bypass that separation you have from the character, because yeah, I've never had, authority over that many people. I've never had this unique ability that made me special in closing rifts and things like that. But the way it's presented, you see this character as just, they were just somebody. Then something went down and now they have to deal with it. So while they are very different from you, very different from the experiences I've had, there is still a way for me to connect with them and see them as potentially me if this stupidly inconvenient thing had happened to me instead.
I think I see what you mean, but the only thing that stops it for me, I think, like when I piece that together, because that should work, is the fact that I didn't get to spend time with them before they became that character. But I see what you mean. Yeah, there is still that they become it, but we don't get to become it. Yeah. From our perspective, we just start with the powers. But no, you are right, and that should make them more relatable.
Because in Origins, of course, you have the origin. That's the whole point of it. But even in Dragon Age 2, you're a Hawk. You have a origin. You know where you came from. You know what you were fleeing. It's about the same time as the events of the beginning of Dragon Age Origins. And in Inquisition, you are this character that was associated with the Chantry, but that's the most you know. Like they instead of like the full amount of the hinterlands, if half of the hinterlands was gone and they had spent that time you were rediscovering your past to a point. Like, were you a servant in the Chantry? Were you like, what were you doing? Like, if you could kind of rediscover some of those issues, that might make your character seem a little bit more tangible and real, because you know where they came from. They never did that.
Yeah, and I would say in Inquisition, you're not choosing an origin story in the way you were in Origins, so you don't get that experience of like fleshing out the character before they're thrust into this position of authority that you guys were talking about. So like, had they had a little origin story where, you are an elf commoner or an elf, or a Dalish elf or something like that, or, you're a dwarf commoner, you would have had a character kind of established. You would have been able to project a little bit more onto who they were before this event. And yeah, that would make them more relatable. But I also feel like I didn't need it in Inquisition. I don't know that I would have appreciated the game anymore. Which I guess kind of leads to the conclusion that relatability isn't a critical element. It's something that needs to be there in moments, but it doesn't need to be a thread that links the entirety of the playthrough.
Well, and that's a big point that you've just mentioned, is that it needs to be there in moments. Because you can have, I can't relate to Sephiroth, like anything about him, but there's moments in Crisis Core in particular when he doesn't want to go and capture his friends or kill his friends. And just in those brief moments, you think, oh, yeah,
I'm
I get
glad
it.
that the way that you relate to Sephiroth is not wanting to kill your friends.
Yeah, we've got so much in common.
Yeah.
And when I read about his hair care regime, I was like, yeah, I get it. There's moments with him, never more than moments, because he's so, even in his earlier, better days, he's so impersonal, so inhuman. There's always something about him. We talked about it before. There's so much about him that's just a bit different. But there's moments where he's identifiable, and that moment when he starts to realize actually where he comes from and his theory on how he was made, and you actually begin to see like, oh shit, oh, poor guy. And then when he's in the basement, just losing himself in these books, trying to find out who he is. And he's essentially doing what Vincent and Dine do. Just lock myself away. It's a bit different because he's engaging, he's not trying to just hide away, but he's still hiding. He still doesn't talk to anyone. He still sleeps in this basement. And just in those minutes, I understand. I empathize. I get this. But it's only fleeting moments. I did want to add just one tiny bit about Inquisition is at the same time, I'm also glad they didn't do the Origins again because we have done it. So I'm not disappointed it's not there, but I do feel that just something is missing at that very start. Even if it was just an extra half hour of us just trying to find our place at that damn ceremony.
Check out the Let's Play for AMKomnenos doing Final Fantasy VII OG version, and Banana finished off Final Fantasy Tactics, the amazing voice actor Banana Hammock Republic.
I wouldn't worry too much about the views for our Let's Play series. I think the glory days of a Let's Play series with no camera was like 2010. We're about 14 years too late, but we're having fun.
So close.
But it's like, it's one of those things. It's always out there. It's always there. If somebody's looking for one and a great one, then they can catch you doing it.
It's just fun.
Yeah.
It's just really fun.
Yeah, that's really it. I mean, I would have loved for that to become like my career somehow, to just play video games and be a jackass on YouTube. That's oddly enough a weirdly relatable aspect that you'll see in a lot of video games, as somebody who's, constantly doing something that others seem to be way more successful with. They seem to be getting different results from doing the exact same thing. And for us, very much still enjoying just the process. And I think like that's absolutely the way you need to go into these kind of things. Like, you need to do it because it's something you want to do, not because of the results. But weirdly, I see that in video gaming, where you'll see like, oh, Cloud and Sephiroth were both soldiers. Why isn't Cloud super cool? Why did I get the broken one?
I want to play as Sephiroth. I want the other timeline.
That'd be neat.
Actually, it wouldn't be that interesting. It's just, well, I'm
it
here.
wouldn't be interesting at all.
Kind of chilling in the live stream, waiting. Oh, I can go creep him out back in the live stream.
I think in Dragon Age Origins, there was a DLC where you got to play as a Darkspawn. I thought that would be interesting. Was not interesting. Yeah.
Didn't play it.
It's not good. Anyway, I will check you guys later. And thank you for recording with us, AMKomnenos and Banana Hammock Republic. Check us out there on like, subscribe, and check out the audio versions of the podcast. Right. Hey, the power of editing.
Hey.
I'll flip the camera. Where it's like,
I did both ways.
Yeah. Right at that moment where you change direction, the camera flips around. You just point weirdly,
it's just spinning
twice in the same direction.
Yeah, I'll just rotate it. Anyway, I will check you guys later. Y'all take care. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.